A few weeks ago, we loaded up our backpacks, left the city, and headed into the Sierras to May Lake for a weekend backpacking. Join me on this trip where I'll talk about how being in the wild deeply inspires me, how drawing while I'm out there is critically important to my practice, and how I take that work one step further once I'm back in the studio. I'm Claire. I'm an artist and designer whose work explores the deep connection we have to the wild and to wild places. Yosemite takes your breath away. Every time I go there, I think, I've been to Yosemite before, it's beautiful. And when you get there, it's just like, wow. It's so spectacularly beautiful. We headed up Tioga Pass Road to the trailhead where we donned our backpacks and set off through fields of wildflowers, lodgepole pine, mountain hemlock, surrounded by granite rocks with the view growing ever more spectacular as we headed upwards to around just over 9,000 feet and to the most beautiful alpine lake. Time holds still when I go out into the wild. All the clocks and noise and busyness of everyday life just falls away and you just be in that crisp mountain air amongst the most spectacular location and place. The wild doesn't care what car I drove to get there. It doesn't care what size I am. It doesn't care what brand of hiking boots I'm wearing. It just accepts me as I am. And there's something profoundly restful about that, something profoundly, deeply healing. So much of my life is lived in my head or engrossed in a screen. And when I go out into the wild, I suddenly become aware of myself as a fully embodied physical presence. It's what I see, what I feel, what I hear, what I smell, what I sense. All of that comes online, and I suddenly become aware of how I actually think with my body as much as I think with my mind. After setting up camp, we headed out to the lookout where we could see the most spectacular view, but also a whole series of thunderclouds rolling towards us. So we quickly headed back to camp, followed by rain, lightning, and then hail, which was a little bit ouchy, but kind of exhilarating, with the thunder rolling all around us. It rained and stormed all night. But the morning dawned clear, and when I got up, the lake was bathed in this wonderful alpine glow. So I grabbed my concertina sketchbook and I headed down to the lake to do some drawing. And warning, I have camping hair in this footage. So you can see what happens to your hair when you go camping. Sketching on plein air is a key part of my process, and it's a really important way of me capturing those sensations and experiences of being out there, encoding them and then bringing them back into the studio. Research shows that drawing is actually a really, really great way of remembering, probably the best way of remembering things, because it acts on multiple fronts. One is kinesthetic, so through the action of drawing, the physical movement of drawing. There's the visual engagement through what you're observing and taking in. It's also semantic in that you are making meaning with what you are seeing and drawing as you're drawing it. And because you're drawing on all those different parts of your brain, it actually really helps to remember and embed that memory, so that when I'm back in the studio, I can look at those drawings and I can recreate the space that I was in when I drew them. So those, in combination with my photographs and the videos that I take, all help as an aid to memory once I'm back and starting to create work about a particular space. As I sat there, I could hear the thunder getting closer again. And so I headed back to camp to see what the plan was, because originally we were going to hike to the top of Mount Hoffman, but clearly that wasn't going to be safe with another weather system coming through. So we made the decision to strike camp early and head back to the car in the hope that we might beat the storm. Spoiler alert, we didn't. We got rained and hailed on as we walked back to the car. Back in the studio, I referenced my sketches and the videos and photos that I took to start to work on a series of working drawings. And this is the next step that I take in my process. So I make the drawings and photos and sketches and videos out in the field. And then when I get back to the studio, I just do a whole series of very quick working drawings where I'm just laying down ideas. I'm not censoring what I'm doing. I'm not really thinking things through. I'm just really intuitively responding to the work, the place, my sketches, my memories. And these then become the foundation for larger works later on, and they become a really great leaping off point for me when I actually start to make bigger work that engages with the place. I work on these drawings in batches. So I usually do multiple at a time, and then I will rotate them out to allow them to dry. Because my predominant form is watercolor, and you have to let watercolor dry. You can't keep layering things up. It gets muddy very quickly. So I work in batches so I can rotate them out and I can keep working and keep working back in. And it's a very intuitive process. So I might start with the idea for a composition, but then it just evolves from there, and then it becomes a response to the marks that I've laid down, and then I reference the images back again to make sure I'm not going too far off track with where I'm going with my response to the place. So the result of this process were two works that I'm actually quite happy with. I quite like them, particularly one of them I really am quite happy with. There's a third one that I don't think is fully resolved yet, and you can see over here, it's still a work in progress. I'm still working on developing that particular piece a little further. It's close, still not quite there. And these drawings will serve as reference works for inspiration later on. This piece really captures the experience of that alpine environment. This one really leaned into exploring the thunderstorm and the experience of being out in that thunderstorm at such a high altitude. We were out in the elements in their rawest form, with thunder rolling all around us and lightning striking. This one is exploring the granite rock, which is such a dominant feature of the environment there and so spectacular. You know, you think of Half Dome, you think of El Capitan. Just the granite, sheer granite rock faces is such a presence in Yosemite. And this is really trying to work in and articulate some of the colors and patterns that you get in that rock that's all folded and almost flesh-like in its presence. Not quite finished yet. This is the one I'm still working on. So how are all these works going to find their way into larger pieces? I don't know yet. That's something I'll be exploring in later videos. What I do know is it was an amazing trip to the most wonderful place, and just so valuable to get out there in the wild and explore. And if you want to know how I make the concertina sketchbooks that I use that are so light and easy to take backpacking, which is very important, or what art materials I packed to take with me, I've made videos about both of those things, and you'll find them linked down below. finally, I want to give a huge shout out to the Outdoor Adventure Club, who did not sponsor this video, but we went with them on a group hike. It was fantastic. It was so well organized, and particular shout out to Emily and Logan, who were our guides, who were very patient with a bunch of people who hadn't done a lot of backpacking before, but were very excited to be out there in the wild. So that's all for this one. Thank you for watching my video, and I hope you enjoyed coming along with me on this backpacking trip and me talking a little bit more about my process and how what I do out in the field starts to translate into my practice. That's all for this time. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.